Hello makers and welcome back to my channel. I'm Patty. I go by Pattymac Makes everywhere online. And may I just say it's lovely to see you. Welcome back. Or welcome if it's your first time. Welcome to all. On the table in front of us, we are looking at a very lovely quilt block. And this block is number 5, the 5th row. The 5th and final row of our Power of 3 quilt that we've been working along for the past, well, 5 weeks now. So what you're going to notice if you've been following along with me is that this fabric is different. And yes, it is. And the reason for that is that oops, sorry about that. Didn't mean to bump you there. The reason for that is that I ran out of the red, and I could not remake the last block in the same colors. So, well, there's a more to the story than that. I made like an executive decision as I got to the end and had the 5th row all made and decided that that block was not the best choice for the particular quilt that I'm in, and so I came up with this one to go in the last row. And but no worries, that last row is not going to go to waste. We'll make that into a wall hanging or a table runner, haven't decided. But anyway, on the table in front of us, we have the last block in the project. And what I will tell you is that I call this the Power of 3 because it's all about using our color wheel to pick a triadic or some relationship of 3 colors on the color wheel. I went with triadic because it's basic. It's like the easiest place to start. And this that you're looking at now falls into the color scheme of red, yellow, and blue. And so this is the piece that we're making today. And let me show you the one that actually went into the quilt. And I will tell you, I've got the quilt top all put together. So I've just kind of folded around to just show the one block. And also it's a little bit different from this one. So oh my gosh, you guys, I'm kind of the Lucy of quilting. I'm just a little bit scatterbrained and absent-minded, but you know what? In the end, all of this stuff works. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the instructions for making both this version and the version that wound up in the quilt project. So anyway, this gives you a couple of options. So hold on, don't go anywhere, and let me show you what the version in the quilt looks like. Okay, so my quilt top is constructed. All of my rows have been made. So for this quilt, it's 5 different blocks, and each row is comprised of 4 blocks. And each one of these blocks is a 12-inch block. So your finished size, or I should say your completed block size, would be 12.5 inches. And then when you sew it into your project, it's a 12-inch block. And then I did 2.5-inch strips sashing in between each to join the rows. And then I did 2.5-inch sashing with cornerstones, as you can see, to join the rows to each other. So the next step for everybody is to just kind of go over this part, but today we're just going to talk about this block. And so you can see this is what's in the actual quilt project as red, yellow, and blue. And then here is the one that I made for us for this project. And it's funny how this one looks actually smaller, but they're the same size. It's just real interesting how the colors will kind of play some mind tricks with you. But anyway, so you can see that there's a little bit of a difference here. And that's okay, because I actually, in the quilt design, I actually went with this version, but when I pulled out the quilt to show you, I realized that it was a little bit different version, so I'm not sure how I did that. But, you know, either one is a cool look, and they both look great. So anyway, for today, we're just going to make this version because that was the version that I made yesterday, and that's what we're going to make today. But I did want you to see it in the finished. Okay. I love this quilt, actually. I'm super excited to go ahead and get it pressed and get the border on, because once the border's on, ooh man, we can just go to town. Let me show you, just like, here's my pinwheel, there's the diamond. It's just, I don't know, I'm excited to get back out. It's been put away for a few weeks while I've been doing life stuff. But that's not why you're here. You're here to talk about this beautiful block. And I'll tell you what I'm going to wind up doing. I'm going to wind up remaking all of the individual blocks, and I'm going to piece them together into a table runner. And then I'll show you that. And you'll see that you can either make the full quilt or the table runner. And I'm really super excited to see this as the table runner. You'll have complete instructions with the cutting instructions for both the block and the row on the website. I'll have a full blog post on that, and that will be linked in the description below. So when you go into the website, you will have this one-page PDF that you can print out, and it'll give you the full design and the cutting instructions to make one block. On the website, the blog post, I'll give you the cutting instructions to complete the full row. When the project is fully done, I will compile all of those directions into one file and put that into my Etsy shop as a download. So if you want everything in one place and to be able to print it out, I will have that available for you. I want to say a couple of things about this project. What I want to say is there's a couple of ways to put it together, and all of the blocks in the Power of 3 quilt are designed as 16 patch units, which means 4 across and 4 down. And in a 16 patch, you are dealing with 4 individual 4 patches. Okay. So with this block, you can put it together a couple of different ways. One way is that you could do these 4 patch units. So you would do these 2 4 patches and these 2 4 patches, and construct those and then put the 4 patches together. And I have demonstrated that for you in all of the other videos. So if you'll go back and look at those, you'll get a feel for doing that. I just think it's helpful to break down the overall block into smaller pieces, because I think when you do that, it's much easier to grasp how it's going to go together, because it can be a little bit overwhelming to take all 16 at one time. At least for me, my brain has a hard time with so many designs and angles and all of that. As Jenny from Missouri Star says, it's all about being angly challenged, and I am extremely angly challenged. So Jenny knows, she gets it. And she coined the perfect phrase. So anyway, this is on the website. It's linked below. If you would like the printout, it's over there. This is free for you. Eventually what I'm going to do is take all of the individual blocks, and then I'm going to write them up in like 4 different sizes. So if you want smaller or larger, I'll have the 4 sizes for the one design all in one file, and those will also be on Etsy. So that's coming. Expecting to do all of it this summer. That's my goal. But anyway, let's look at the block in real life, because you can see it's just, I mean, it's the same, but it's a little bit different in real life, and especially when you start plugging in your own colors and designs. And when I do these designs, I'm just doing solid color, and I do that just so you can really see the shapes. And I do a specific color design to just play with the color theory and all of that, and to just kind of give you a guideline for laying things out. And I do think it's easier to see the overall shape and the design in solids rather than using the prints. So that's my particular approach. Okay, but this is exactly the same. So how did I approach this one? The way I approached making this block was kind of like how I made the sawtooth star. And when I say that, when I made the sawtooth star, even though it's the 16 grid, I wound up making it kind of like a 9-patch, where I did this row, I treated this row as a unit, and then this bottom row as a unit. So it was 1, 2, 3, which is how you would put together a 9-patch. And I did that because when I made the center, I did a strip set, and so the blue and the yellow strips sewn together, and then I cut the strip sets to the size for the middle and then made the 4-patch. And then what I wound up doing was taking the center unit and then creating the sides, and then I sewed this row and that row. But anyway, we'll get into that. Let's talk about what we're going to need for this block. Here's all of the pieces that we're going to use in the block for today, which I named the Stair Step Block. That's just what it looked like to me. It was kind of like a stair step. So that's what I called it. It's a lot of little pieces because, you know, it is 16 individual blocks. So there's a little bit of stuff to make, but honestly, it goes together really fast. So let's go over what we have. For me, my color A is the blue, which is the teal polka dot. And you're going to need 4 3.5-inch squares. There's a caveat there, and we'll cover that in a minute. But anyway, for simplicity, 4 3.5-inch squares. And then my color B is the red, and you're going to want 2 4.5-inch squares. And then for the gold, which is this, you're going to need 2 3.5-inch squares. And then we get into the white, or in my case the cream, which is my background, and you have it cut in 2 sizes. So you're going to need 6 3.5-inch squares, and you're going to need 2 4.5-inch squares. Now, let's talk about a couple of things. The reason you're going to have 2 different sizes is because we're making we're making 4 half square triangle units. And when you make a half square triangle, you always cut the squares that you're going to put together to make those units. You're going to cut those oversize, and then you're going to trim them back. So I just, again, because I'm angly and mathematically challenged, which is not a great combination when you're trying to quilt, but it is what it is. So, yeah, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So when I tell you that, it's true. Anyway, that's why these are a little bit larger, because these are going to go together to make the half square triangles, and we'll piece those. And give me just a second and I'll show you how to put them together. And we'll make 2 at a time, half square triangles with these blocks, and then we'll trim them down to the 3.5 inches. So let me just show you the strip here. So, you know, when you're doing things like these 4-patch units, you can cut all of your individual squares and then sew them together. And if you've got like maybe all 4 are different, then that is easiest if you do, you know, each square and then put it together. But in this case, we're doing the same 2 colors, we're just alternating their position. And so when you have something like that, cutting strips sewing it as a strip set, which is what this is. This is a strip set of 2. And what I did was I cut each strip 3.5 inches wide. I just cut it on with the fabric. And then just to make it easier to put the strips together, I cut the width of fabric in half and sewed together. So you wind up essentially, when you take the selvage off, with a strip set of the 2 3.5 inch by 20. And then we're just going to cut that down to the 3.5 inch width. And we'll do that in just a second. And then we'll do that first and piece that. And then the next thing we'll do is to set these up to make our half square triangles. So give me just a second and I will go ahead and set those up and show you what that looks like and how I put those, like get those started, I guess to say. So you can make your half square triangles however you like to make them. That's up to you, but this is what I do. So right sides together, and as I said, they're overcut by a full inch. And then I have this triangle that I use that has a really nice line for the 1/4 inch. And I just put the 1/4 inch on the point, and then what I'm going to do is draw my lines on either side. And you know, you don't have to use a pen. I like to use a pen when I'm filming because then you can see what I'm doing. Otherwise, you can't really see. I do like those disappearing ink pens, and I use those quite a lot. So I draw my lines, and then what I'm going to do when I go to the machine is to sew right on the lines. So I'm going to sew on the lines, and then what I'm going to do is come back, and I can use this, it doesn't really matter, and you're just going to cut them apart, and that will give you your 2 pieces. And then I'm going to press to the dark side, which is pressing to the red, and trim it down to 3.5 inches. So I'm going to do all of that off camera, because I don't think you need to see me sew. You know, there's lots of ways to attain the same result. And really, it's about finding out what works for you and what gives you your most consistent results. And for me, this is how I like to make a half square triangle. 2 at a time. I know it takes longer, and then I trim them, each of them down. Yes, it takes longer, but you know, gosh, it's just such a nice, consistent result. So now we're going to take the strip set, and I'm going to go ahead and trim that, and I'm going to line to the bottom edge, and I'm going to count back 3.5. So 1, 2, 3, and 1/2. And you know, I just love using this ruler because it has all the tick marks I need, and it's on the long edge. It's long enough to do all of these small projects. So you can't see it on camera, but there's like a little bitty mark on either end here that I can line up to get my proper 1/2 inch mark. So 1, 2, 3.5. Put that over here, and then we'll do it again. 1, 2, 3. Let me tell you, I wound up buying a new, whoops, see, this happens sometimes, and you don't get your pieces cut all the way. So be careful when you take your pieces apart. Anyway, I wanted to say I bought a new rotary cutter because I was really struggling with the other one, and what a difference it's made. So we've cut our pieces apart, and then we're just going to flip it. And then there's your 4 patch. And then because the seam is going to the yellow on both of them, I already have perfect nested seams, so I can just put these together. And just get them right in there. And then I like to go ahead and just pin to keep everything together. And I even like to do the edge, the end. So when you pin or secure your fabric at both ends and in the center where the seam is, you have your best chance at having something that works like it's supposed to. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to sew along this line. I'm going to then go to the ironing board. I'm going to press my seams open. I'm going to sew both of these, cut them apart, have them pressed, have them trimmed down, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to construct the block. Okay, all my pieces are constructed, so let's lay out this block and talk about how to put it together. So I'm going to refer to my pattern, which is up here just off camera. And the first thing I'll do is just turn this so it matches the pattern. And what I'm going to do is lay out here. And so we're going to need a half square triangle. Just go like that. And then a white block or a background fabric. And then this one is going to go like this. And then a white. And then we're going to just go ahead and put our blue, because we know that it's going to be like this stair step. Okay. And then in the opposite corners, it's the white or the background. Okay, and there it is. I will tell you, when I did my block yesterday, I had to take it apart because I got my half square triangles out of whack. So if you need to take a picture before constructing, go ahead and do that, because it can get, if you're angularly challenged, let's just say that, you can get things kind of turned around. So what I'm going to do now is chain piece all of my pieces. And so the first thing I'll do is I'll put these together, and they're going to go together on this edge, like so. Now what I do is I clip everything, and I do that because I am not going to remember when I get over to the sewing machine what edge goes where. There's just no way. I can't remember. So when I clip my squares together, it tells me where I'm going to sew. So where the sewing is going to go, the stitch line. And then I can just sew everything at the same time in the chain piecing. And if you're not familiar with chain piecing, I do have a video on that. It's time savings, and you'll also save thread, because you're just going to run each piece one after the other through your sewing machine. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do is get all these sewn together, and then I'm going to press them. I'm going to press all of my seams open, and then I'm going to come back and we'll see where we are. Okay, we're back. We've got all of our 2 patches completed, so we're going to just kind of put them in place, and I'll just go for the low-hanging fruit and put those first, because I know that's where they go. And then the next thing we'll do is, let's see, this is where I got kind of challenged yesterday. So I want to make sure I get these into the right place. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's not right. Is that correct? No, that's not right. Oh, here we go. So take your time with this because it's real easy, at least for me, to get these kind of a little bit screwy. And again, look at it on your phone because like when I film these, I have my phone right here, you can see it. So it's set up as a monitor so that I can see what I'm filming, and it's like a good reference for me to actually look over at the monitor to make sure that I have everything where it needs to be. And so far, so good. So to do our next step in chain piecing, I'm going to put these together. So basically, like I said, the middle is going to be treated as like a large row. Just like the 9-patch type of idea we did with the Sawtooth Star. The Sawtooth Star, even though it was a 16-patch, I did wind up just going with the center on that one as a solid piece. Okay, so now for this part, we have a couple of things to be mindful of. We want to make sure that the seams line up, and then we want to make sure that this is in the seam allowance so that we have our point. So we're going to line it up. For this one, I'll use the pins. And I'll just come straight through and make sure that I'm on the seam, which I am. And then pin. And then I always pin on, excuse me, on the outer as well, just to make sure that everything is lined up as it should be. There we are. And then we'll turn it. Okay, so it goes this way. So what I do is I just go ahead and put both sides on. And then when I go over to the sewing machine, and see what I'm doing is I'm just like looking to make sure that that pin is right there at the seam. I'm sure some people wouldn't like you to pin right through the seam, but you know, that's how I do it. Then I know I have the seams lined up as they should be. And then when I sew, I'll sew with this side of the fabric up. And what I want to do is make sure that I sew just to this side. Let's come in closer. Let's see, turn it this way. Just to that side. To the point is winds up living in the seam allowance. So my strategy will be, first I'll feed this one through, and then I'll go ahead and chain piece both of these on this side because I've marked it with the clip so I know where to go. And then when those are through, I'll clip it apart and then I'll pull this out and sew this side. And then I'll have everything, all three of the rows constructed, and then we'll put them together. So hang on. I'm going to do all of that. I'm going to press everything open, and I'll be back and show you what we've got. We have basically 3 rows. So this is like our center row, and then we have 2 thin rows. And the way that we're going to put them together is, I know that the blue is like a stair step, so that's a good visual cue for laying it out. And there we go. And I got it just right this time. Yay. Okay. So like I said, it's kind of like a 9 patch. So in a 9 patch, you have 3 rows. And now with the construction like this, we have the same. Now I wound up just on the middle, pressing out, and just, I don't know, just to keep it a little bit simpler. And I think that's fine. And so what I'm going to do, whenever I do these 16 patches, what I wind up doing is I start in the center and then I work my way out. And I do that. Now this one, I'm going to take back over and press it just really quick, just to get it a little more flat. It's not unusual for you to have to go back and repress a seam. So hold on, make sure I have it in the right place. Okay, goes like that. This one I'll definitely pin because I've got 3 seams. You know, and this is just whatever works for you. And, you know, a lot of people, they are just really, really good at piecing their stuff together, and they don't have to be so fiddly with their seam pinning, but I just know how I am. And if I don't do this extra work, I wind up having my seams not match. And I really want my seams to match. It's not, you know, nobody's going to lose their life because your seams don't match, but, you know, it is a nice thing to do. And then we have that one. And again, I'm going to pin at the ends just to hold everything in place. And I know that this is like a lot of extra pinning and prep, and a lot of people don't do all of this and don't need to do all of this. But for me, I do. And, you know, there's some easing in of the fabric to get everything to line up where you want it. And that's just life. Now, if somebody's been doing this for, you know, 20 or 30 years, they don't need to go to all this extra trouble. They can just, they can almost do it in the dark and everything's going to line up as it should. I'm not like that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just put this on too. Oh, and see how this is turned? I'm going to press that flat. I'm going to just do the same thing on that side. So what I'm going to wind up doing is putting both on and take this over and get it all sewn, pressed. And when I come back, there's going to be a completed block. So don't go anywhere. We're back and the block is all put together, and I think it's super pretty. And I just love red, yellow, and blue together. I think it's so pretty, and I fall back on that combination constantly, just to be totally honest. Too much. I use it in everything. But anyway, here's the finished block, and you can see that all of the points line up, and then on our outer edge we still have the little the tab. I call it a tab, and that's basically our seam allowance, so that we retain points when we sew into the next part of the project. And then here's the back, and you know, I can fix this. We'll go back and repress that. You're going to kind of have to press and repress your blocks a little bit to get all of your seams just right, but you can see that I pressed open here, and then all of this is just going that way. Whatever makes your block as flat as possible, that's what we're looking to do. I did go ahead and give this just a little bit of a spray starch to give it a little more body, and now it's ready. And I'm going to go ahead and remake all of my blocks in this Power of 3 quilt and show it to you as a table runner. But before we get to that, we're going to finish off the big quilt, and the next step in that project is to go ahead and get all of your rows pieced together and the border. So the next video is going to be talking about the sashing and the border. So stick around for that. And in the meantime, I hope you'll try out this really fun block, the Stair Step Block. And yeah, make 4 of these and you'll have all of your last row in the Power of 3 ready to go. Okay, that's it for this time. Thanks so much for watching and being here. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, happy quilting!